Now let's go to a question from a viewer and also a past Iowa Soybean Association director.
Hi, I'm Mark Jackson. I farm southeast Iowa, about an hour southeast of Des Moines. How do you view the one water conversation moving forward in the world of conservation and agriculture in general?
So, Roger, the one water topic, how would you frame that?
You know, I'm a tremendous advocate for one water, and for folks that don't know what that is, you know, it's really this integrated, holistic water management. And so today, you know, we're dealing with floods, we're dealing with downstream nutrient issues, we're dealing with upstream water quality issues. And so one water brings it all together under one umbrella. As I think about the future and where we're going, today we have urban interests working with upstream agriculture interests, and we're making great progress on those topics. And the reason we're making progress is because we're understanding what values the urban folks need, and we're thinking about what kinds of services the upstream agriculture interests can provide. And we're trying to cut a deal. We're making projects where there's a value proposition for both parties. And that's why I'm optimistic about one water. And frankly, I don't see how you can do it any other way. You know, the non-point source challenge, the water quality challenges facing this country are enormous, and there's a lot of variability. And we can't do this in a siloed sort of way. And so one water brings those pieces together, brings the alignment together, and we really start thinking about the value proposition.
So you're addressing the rural, urban stakeholders, and again, Dave, it's about that farmer and landowner stakeholder, which is also very important. What gives you a lot of reason for optimism as you look forward with those relationships?
Yeah, so we remain very focused on this value equation, right? And there is a lot of opportunities for us to make progress within a very sort of standard traditional look at that value equation. We can continue to find the right outcomes from business planning and implementation of practices where you get a value equation that's aligned. When you start talking about some of the more complicated issues that One Water is working on addressing and some of the other programs and dialogues that are going on, we're continuing to try and stay as engaged as possible so that we can bring those back to our clients working as landowners and then ultimately their farmer tenants in order to find the opportunities to get things implemented, again, fixed around that value equation, because that's where you have real sustainability.
There are some who say that progress isn't happening fast enough. How do you respond to that?
Well, progress happens at the rate of investment, and if we have more resources, we can speed it up. But we also have the ingredients of relationships. You have to have working relationships, and where we have those, we see great progress, and there's no doubt about it. There's no argument about that. I'd love it to go faster. I'd love it for there to be more resources so it can go faster, because we have a big job to do if we're serious about the goals that we all have on these issues. So therein lies some of the challenge.
From your vantage point, Dave, again, in thinking about the space that Peoples has in this equation, as you look maybe 1 to 3 years down the road, what gives you the most reason for optimism on continuing to show progress on such an important issue?
Yeah, so it comes back to the alignment piece. We're continuing to see more and more progress in alignment of interests and finding the ways to get those interests aligned in very implementable kinds of outcomes. One of the challenges certainly that we face, this is a water quality component more, is the fact that there's a lot of good work going on, but it tends to be fairly dispersed, right? And those kinds of practice implementations and don't generate as good or as immediate of outcomes when you see dispersed resources, particularly related to the water quality. On some of the soil progress, that can be visualized and measured at a smaller scale, and we're able to see that just a little bit more quickly. So as we continue to draw more and more alignment across the interest, that's what really keeps us optimistic.
If you could wave your magic wand, Roger, how would you wave it? What would appear that would be significant and meaningful to move forward on such a big and such an important issue?
Well, Aaron, on the waterfront, I'm a watershed guy. I believe in the watershed approach because you're putting boundaries around an area, and watersheds are nested. And so we know that we can make progress in very small watersheds, and we need to scale those up. So if I could wave my magic wand and we had unlimited resources, we would have a significant watershed approach in the United States and within the states. And because what that does is you have plans, you have institutional alignment, you have data and information driving decision making, and you have financing to drive this. So you talk about sustainability, you have to have all those ingredients for it to work.
And I'll kind of pose the same question to you to wrap, Dave. If you could have that one thing or that one change agent, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And the reality within our business is being able to make sure that landowners understand the long-term value proposition in a very clear and transparent way. Once we are able to establish that, being able to move it back to practices and the relationship with farmer tenants becomes a much, much simpler process. And then we can, again, data-driven, sort of execution-driven monitoring of how that progress moves forward. And so that would be really the ideal circumstances to make that sort of a universal language.
And thus concludes our first season of the State of Soy. We trust you've benefited from our conversations spanning a host of issues, from trade, tariffs, and livestock to Gulf Midge, water quality, and food labels. You've heard from us and nearly a dozen guests. Now we'd like to hear from you. Send us a note. Tell us what you liked, how we can improve, and most importantly, the topics and the guests that you'd like to hear from in Season 2. Thanks to the Machine Shed Restaurant in Urbandale for hosting this timely and informative conversation. And be sure to connect with the Iowa Soybean Association. Until our next episode, the very best to you from the Iowa Soybean Association. Now go make it a great day and have a safe and bountiful harvest.